Right, so everyone's ready? The benefits of exporting LNG to Japan are completely outweighed by the massive hit our own domestic industries would take. So it is because that, first of all, as my partner brought up in her first speech, that Japan does not need LNG, but also secondly, that by exporting to foreign countries, we are actually damaging our own economy. So David brought up a point in his 2AC talking about the National Economic Research Society. They said basically that there's a net economic benefit when we export LNG. And you can actually flow my disadvantage in direct response to this point. You can tag as higher consumer price. Higher consumer price. Supply and demand. Sending gas outside of the United States means lower supplies within the US, which means higher prices. If US manufacturers depend on gas as an input to their manufacturing process, they may be pushed out of business if the price becomes uncompetitive. These businesses located in the US specifically because we have low natural gas prices. So throughout this disadvantage, we'll be looking at a couple of examples, especially in Australia, where we've seen that exporting LNG has actually damaged our own national economy. My first piece of evidence under here, you can tag as subpoint A, manufacturers oppose. Manufacturers oppose. This is from Charles R. Morris in 2013, quote, "But the industry's clamor for expedited approvals is opposed by an alliance of large manufacturing companies led by Nucor and Dow Chemical, and including Huntsman Chemical, Celanese, Alcoa, and American Public Gas Association. They warn that large-scale exporting at international prices will inevitably push American prices up to international levels and risk smothering a US manufacturing revival," end quote. In simple terms, this evidence means that when we let LNG leave the country, we're driving up the prices, making it unaffordable for industries that use LNG to continue to employ more people. This leads me to my link, or essentially how the disadvantage will occur. You can tag this as the Australia experience. The Australia experience. Australia has also exported LNG to South Korea and Japan in the past, and that has not turned out well for them whatsoever. Again, this is from Charles R. Morris, a former banker and lawyer fellow at the Century Foundation, written in 2013, quote, "Fortunately, we don't have to rely on forecasts. There's a real-life experiment underway in Australia. They've been exporting natural gas for some time in modest amounts, but a number of big projects will start coming online next year, and local gas prices have already tripled, though there is ample supply and there have been little change in production costs. Suppliers apparently prefer to sell the LNG to the likes of Japan and South Korea, who will pay a premium for it. One major Australian fertilizer and ammonia producer that had been planning a new $1 billion plant at home has canceled it to relocate in Louisiana. The chief executive officer in an interview said he was confident that the United States would carefully limit exports. One can only hope," end quote. So specifically in the case of Australia, they had a large LNG supply similar to the United States. So many chemical manufacturers actually made their product there in Australia. But once they started exporting that product, or the LNG, out of the country, it drove up prices, making it unaffordable for those chemical manufacturers and multiple other industries to stay in the country. As a result, one specific company was actually forced to relocate to the United States because, again, we have all this excess LNG that makes it cheaper to produce more of their product. So as we can see, it is essential to have cheap LNG in the United States domestic market in order to make sure that our chemical manufacturers can thrive. This leads me to my impacts. My first of a couple impacts you can tag as massive job loss. Massive job loss. This is again from Charles R. Morris in 2013, a former banker and lawyer fellow at the Century Foundation. Quote, "An industry trade group has identified 97 new chemical manufacturing projects underway, with some $72 billion in new investment, about half of it from overseas. These are all billion-dollar, long lead time investments. The job implications, taking into account supply chain, sending multipliers and other spin-off effects, are in the millions," end quote. The chemical manufacturing industry within the United States is worth billions of dollars. We're risking all of this increased productivity, all of this employment, by letting LNG leave the country and drive up prices, making it unaffordable for those LNG companies to continue to, it would make it unaffordable for the chemical manufacturing producers to be able to do what they do. My second impact you can tag as exports reduce job creation. Exports reduce job creation. This is from Daniel J. Weiss in 2014, a senior fellow and director of climate strategy at the Center for American Progress. Quote, "Lower natural gas prices have fueled the recent increase in U.S. manufacturing. FuelFix, a Hearst Energy publication, reported in March that an ample supply of cheap natural gas has ignited a U.S. manufacturing surge projected to expand plant payrolls and drive demand for chemicals, machinery, and steel through the end of the decade. Sinking natural gas prices are linked to more than 196,000 new manufacturing jobs in major metropolitan areas and a $124 billion boost to sales for energy-intensive products like fabricated metals and plastics, according to a U.S. Conference of Mayors report. This growth is at risk if more LNG exports boost natural gas prices, as studies indicate. According to EIA, the industrial sector, which includes manufacturers that use natural gas as a feedstock, would experience a 28% increase in direct natural gas costs between 2013 and 2020. The price boost would be more than a 50% increase between 2013 and 2030. LNG exports could reduce net job creation and compared to using this gas for domestic manufacturing, end quote. So basically, to sum up the long piece of evidence, again, it's reiterating everything that we've been discussing in this round. Basically, the affirmative team is surrendering everything that we've created in our manufacturing industry to export it over to Japan and South Korea. This means that we're going to be losing those countless jobs and billions of dollars of revenue for the chemical manufacturers. We cannot risk this. We must keep our domestic industries strong at all costs. All right, now moving on, specifically in response to their point about how there's net economic benefit, you can tag my response as Australia. Again, specifically in the case of Australia, an actual example of when a country in a similar situation to the United States exported LNG product, their economy was severely affected. Chemical manufacturers were forced to leave. Again, there's so many examples of high LNG prices forced by exports to foreign countries, completely ruining their domestic economies. All right, now let's move on to a solvency point. So basically, even if you don't believe that all of these disadvantage is bad, there is actually clear reasons why companies won't export to Japan in the first place. So there are kind of two things that can happen here. One, either we lose our domestic industry and our chemical manufacturers, or the plan won't be able to solve whatsoever. All right, so you can tag my solvency point as not profitable in Asia. Not profitable in Asia. This is a Reuters news service written in 2015. Quote, "Not only are LNG volumes rising, the supply map is also changing. Australia, a source of most of the new production, will move ahead of Malaysia as the world's #2 LNG exporter this year. A newcomer to LNG exports in 2015 is the United States, although the current low prices will make it difficult for its LNG to come to Asia. Spreads in gas price between Asian LNG and US gas have fallen by 50%. With liquefaction and shipping costs of US $6.50, arbitrage margins are now negative," end quote. So, in more simple language, this means that it's really unaffordable for US companies to export to Asia, as the prices, as Australia and Malaysia are already taking up most of the market there. So again, we either have two scenarios. One, somehow we are able to export to Japan, while that completely destroys our chemical manufacturing industry and endangers thousands of jobs, or the plan is uninherent and will not be able to solve whatsoever. I'd ask you to vote for the more reasonable solution, which is that of the status quo and the negative team. Thank you so much for judging. All right, ready, David?
No, not quite yet.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Okay. Sorry, I should have told you.
Yeah, it's fine.
Ready?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Hi, Colin. I just have a few questions for you. First
Yes.
off, I want to see a piece of evidence, so I can back my partner.
Sure.
The disadvantage subpoint A evidence.
Yes. Manufacturers.
Okay, sounds good. Top one there. So first off, were Australia's prices as cheap as the US's?
Wait, can you repeat the
Were
question?
Australia's prices as cheap as the US prices?
Yes, it was a very similar market to the United States.
So Australia's prices are 5 times cheaper than that in Asia.
Can you rephrase the question?
So Australia's prices, the price that Australia uses, the prices of LNG in Australia, are they 5 times cheaper than that in Asia?
Okay, so you mean, are you asking whether or not in Australia currently, right now, domestically, the prices are 5?
I'm asking when this actually happened, when they exported to Japan, were their prices as cheap as the US's?
They're similar, I think similar prices. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, sounds good. And would you agree that Australia just went through an economic downturn recently?
I have not heard that. I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you agree that our study was specific to the US?
Your study did you read that in a specific speech?
Yeah, the study you are responding to.
Oh, the National Economic
Mhm.
Research Society? Yes.
Okay, and you would agree that there is a difference between Australia's and the U.S.'s economy?
There are many similarities, as I pointed out, specifically
Okay, but
with the
has
LNG
strongest,
market.
U.S. probably has the strongest economy in the world, correct? Currently?
Maybe not the strongest, but the biggest economy, yes.
Okay, and Australia has on what on the global scale?
Well, it doesn't really matter how big Australia's economy is. Both Australia and the United States are heavily centric on exporting natural
So
resources.
does Australia
it's
have
very
the same
similar.
manufacturing capability as the U.S.?
I believe so, yeah. They have many natural resources.
Okay, so then you would agree that basically the whole entire premise of your guys' second speech relies on the Australia example, correct?
Not necessarily the Australian example, but we also read multiple pieces of evidence. I believe actually our impact of exports reduced job creation was specific to the United States.
But
Yes.
it's all based off the example of Australia, correct?
No, I don't think that piece of evidence, it was according to an EIA report, which was conducted in the United States.
Okay, so
So the Australia example is basically one empiric of what we have seen when countries have exported LNG. And then there are also multiple studies that show we don't want to do it in the first place within the US.
Okay, and so your idea, so you would agree that in the end of that piece of evidence study that we read,
Mhm.
it says that the prices that will rise the benefits outweigh that, correct?
The prices that will rise and decrease.
In the U.S., the prices that will rise, the benefits will outweigh that. The study said that, correct?
Your study?
Yes.
I suppose so, but there are multiple studies that say the opposite thing.
Okay.
And we've seen from real life
Were
examples
there,
in Australia.
did you guys
that-
actually read any studies, or was you just used?
Yeah, I
the
think,
example?
no, our impact was of exports reduced job creation. That was based on a study.
Okay, can I see that piece of evidence?
Yes.
Thank you. And I can't see what time I have left. What is it?
Oh, we're out.
Sounds good.
Sorry.
The glare from the light.